I find the biggest thing that gets in the way of any entrepreneur is just the fear. And there's so many unknowns. Like we can, just ask a million questions, but it's great to ask a lot of questions to educate yourself. But if you're asking a lot of those questions and it's getting in the way of you making decisions, you're never going to make decisions.
Trying to reach my goals, got no time for mistakes. Yeah, I'm standing on business, need a big safe. Suited up, got the blueprint in the briefcase. It's go time on the grind, these are big stakes.
Broadcasting from the franchise Sidekick studio, welcome to the Sidekick Life. Get ready for stories of passion, problem solvings, and success from those living life on their terms. Welcome back to the Sidekick Life. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here with a longtime friend, a longtime colleague, somebody that I've just watched do amazing things inside franchising. Josh Skolnick has been an innovator inside franchising, and we're here to talk about his story and his brands and his success and what how he lives the Sidekick life. So Josh, first off, welcome for being here, man. Excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Ryan and Tyler, thank you.
Yeah, Tyler too, I guess.
I'm saying that.
Couple of exciting things that I like to share about Josh is you have founded multiple franchise brands, a couple that even helped me kind of kick off one of my companies in the past, which I'm sure we'll talk about. You're one of the only guys I've ever been stuck in an elevator with, so that's kind of exciting. And you're here specifically in Omaha because you have founded one of the fastest, maybe the fastest, or at least one of the fastest growing portfolio franchise brands in the country, where you are the chairman and the founder. And we're super happy and lucky to have you. So
thank you.
You got it. If you don't mind, we want to start back to the beginning, right? We want to start with the Josh Skolnick story. So tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Eastern Pennsylvania. And so actually not an Omaha native, but made a decision to found horsepower brands here in Omaha to be central in the country, and more importantly, access to some strong talent that we have within the franchising industry. However, my background is very unique. I grew up in a blue collar household, watched my mother and father build a hardwood flooring business for almost 42 years. And they worked in their business, not on their business. And so growing up, I watched my father work 7 days a week. And so, they really taught me a strong work ethic. Around 9-10 years of age, I began push mowing lawns in a local neighborhood as I actually observed a neighbor struggling to get off of his scooter. He's about 70 years old, had suffered a stroke within the year prior to me starting to mow lawns. And I just approached him and asked him, like, hey, listen, I mow my parents' lawn with a push mower. You have a riding mower. I could actually do your lawn and my parents' lawn in less time it takes me to do my parents' lawn. I'll mow yours for free if you're willing to let me do it.
Big upgrade to the rider. You got
exactly.
It, yeah.
And so I did that. And then it started like other lawns in the neighborhood. Built that business through grade school. And actually, by the time I was in high school, I had 6 full-time employees. And I only continued through with my schooling simply because my mother and father had asked me to. That was the one thing they wanted me to do, even though I was building the business, to ensure that there wasn't some further education or career that I wanted to kind of flow into following high school. But I made it through high school for several reasons. I bartered landscape services to my teachers for passing grades. I paid other kids, like a lot of entrepreneurs think, to pay others to do certain work for them. I paid other kids to actually complete a lot of the projects and tasks for me to get those passing grades to get through. So graduated high school in 2002, continued to build my lawn care business, and then found myself around 2008 out of the lawn care business, focused on some real estate ventures in both residential and commercial real estate. And about a year after being out of the lawn care industry, sold my business in 2007, and in mid-2008, I had an existing client needed a tree taken down. And so I kind of put together all the pieces of the puzzle for him in June of 2008. And that day, Saturday, June 7th, 2008, when I took that tree down, I lost money on that job, by the way, because I had no idea what I was doing, underbid the job, had no idea what was actually involved from an equipment standpoint, rented a bunch of stuff, had to buy chainsaws. Because when we actually showed up, the funniest part about that piece of the story is when we showed up to actually take that tree down, I had a contract climber, a guy that knew how to do the work and had his own insurance and charged by the day. We handed him an 18-inch home light chainsaw to take down a 42-inch tree. And he looks at me and goes, hey, boss, we got a problem. When I cut all the way around that tree, there's going to be a center of it that we didn't touch. And that thing's not going to go timber on its own.
Yeah, right.
So I had to go out and buy some equipment. But we made a lot of noise that Saturday. And people were poking their heads out, asking me like, hey, I've got a tree blocking my view coming out of my driveway, or an overgrown bush, dropping debris in my gutters and on the roof in the pool, whatever it might be. And I sold $20,000 worth of work up and down the street, knowing nothing about the tree care industry. That day. Wow. And so I would just look at jobs, and like from my experience in lawn care, I'm like, I know what I want to get per day. I'm kind of like modeling this out. I have no idea that the labor for tree care is far more expensive. So I'm just looking at jobs going half a day, full day, like, okay, $1,200, $2,500 sounds good. And, everything at the end of the day came up to about $2,500. Monday morning, I'm in the tree business, and I very quickly started to seek out qualified people who knew what they were doing. And I was very fortunate that I did, because I was way out over my skis, because I did not know the industry. Lawn care is eye level down and tree care is eye level up. With all that being said, we built the business at a rapid pace and ultimately grew it to a multi-million-dollar operation within the first 12 months. And so as I built that business, I continued to think of ways as I grew and scaled it, like what was I going to do long-term to really, build a much stronger revenue stream than operating a single location. So I actually spent about 6 months going through the process of interviewing different financial institutions to secure a $5 million working capital line, which at the tail end of the process, the day I was supposed to actually go close that loan, I met somebody in the franchising industry who asked me when I was at their house providing an estimate, is this business a franchise? Because everything you guys do feels and smells like a franchise. You guys have great systems. I said, franchising, that's like McDonald's and Burger King and food and fitness. And they said, no, there's a lot of service companies. And they started listing some. And I said, tell me more about that. And he did. And I canceled that appointment, later that day to go sign that loan, never closed on it, spent a few months investigating franchising, and then decided to franchise my business. And so obviously there's a lot of things that happened after that as I've gone on to build Monster Tree Service into the first tree care franchise in North America to over 240 franchise units, which Ryan, you had a role in helping me to build that at a certain point. And then getting into Redbox Plus in 2018 with a unique patented product in the roll-off waste industry with the porta potties in the front of construction dumpsters, and then exiting both of those brands with a combined almost 500 units between the two of them, and then beginning to build horsepower brands. So there's a lot of things outside of franchising I've had an opportunity to participate in, but a large majority of my career in the last 13 to 15 years has been in franchising.
Hey Sidekicks, it's Ryan Zink here. I'll never forget the moment I opened my first franchise, helping my first customer, hiring my first employee, and cashing my first check. It wasn't just a business, it was the beginning of living life on my terms. When Tyler and I started Franchise Sidekick, we reimagined how people would find brands and succeed in franchise ownership. We're the fastest growing franchise advisory group in the country because we built a smarter, tech-driven system. Our approach has helped people just like you purchase over 10,000 franchise locations, and we've earned a 5-star rating on Google doing it. Now we're sharing exactly how we do it in a quick 20-minute webinar titled 10,000 Locations and Counting, the Franchise Buyer's Blueprint. If you're ready to explore a path to financial freedom and take control over your future, this is your first step. And did I mention our services are always 100% free? Click the link below to sign up now because you deserve to live life on your terms. What a story. Go ahead. I know you.
No,
I gotta.
It's where you go from here, because this is an unbelievable story. Because I love your story because it's so entrepreneurial in nature. It's like starting young. I was the same way. I like flipping cars. You were mowing yards, and you just kind of work through it. But the thing about you is like you reached out for help. You're an obsessive learner, which is awesome. I mean, you took down trees. You're like, I'm just gonna take down this tree. Like, how old were you at that time?
Oh, I was early to mid 20s. I mean, 2008, if I roll back, I'm 41 today. So it was, early 20s, probably about 23.
I'm just going to take down this tree, get some people to figure it out and just roll with it. I love it, man. It's amazing.
I want to unpack something here because I want to rewind. I want to ask you a whole bunch about being an entrepreneur, but first I just want to talk a little bit about the story. Like, you said I had a role and how we met. So you and we meet at a franchise broker conference, which
Correct.
is like where franchise opportunities are at and people are considering this. And we just met briefly, spoke for a while, but then after the fact, I was starting a company called Franchise Fastlane, and you had already started Monster Tree, and you'd done a nice job. I think you were probably 30 or 35 locations at the time.
Right about that.
And I was trying to convince Josh that Fastlane would be a good way to help represent them in the franchise world. And I still remember we had talked several times, and you're finally, I think, ready to go. Like we're having the conversation where he's ready to go. And he calls me and we're talking, and all of a sudden I get my wife calls, and I click off. And then my wife calls again. I'm like, 2 times, but I'm gonna click. She calls again. Finally, on like the 4th time she called, I answer the phone and I'm like, hey, honey, what's up? I'm on an important call. And she's like, a tornado just hit the house, and like we were doing an addition and it blew over. I'm like, is everybody okay? She said, yes. I'm like, I got to call you back. And then I went back on the phone with Josh. We finalized the deal for Fastlane to help Monster find franchisees. And we had an unbelievable run on that.
We did.
And Redbox. I mean, I think like you said, like probably close to 500 units between the two that we did together. And you were just great to work with, because the thing that I always appreciated you outside of your entrepreneurial spirit and your innovation was your problem solving. Whether it was, how were we going to find leads? What were we going to communicate to franchisees? But then when franchisees got in your system, I mean, there was a lot of them at one time, and you were always available to help them figure out their problem. So just talk a little bit about that, like the challenges and the things that you really appreciated about growing those first two brands.
One of the things I talk about all the time is what I learned, because ultimately I've launched 3 franchise companies in total with a total of 11 brands collectively, and now well in excess of 2,000 franchise units. But I always talk about when I first got into franchising with Monster Tree Service, I thought I knew what it took to develop a business into a franchise opportunity for people in the general public to, really get out there and acquire an opportunity within an industry. But what I overlooked early on is that there were so many things that were natural to me as an entrepreneur that I just knew to do because I grew up around business ownership, watching my mother and father run a small family-owned business and then launching my own companies. But I actually failed miserably back in 2011 when I first started franchising on the systems and the transfer of knowledge side of things, because we didn't truly dot every I and cross every T. And so what that really did for us was, there was a lot of people early on that bought into, my experience, what I built. It was extremely impressive to look at a guy with no prior experience building a $5 million company in an extremely short period of time, and extreme profitability within an industry that most people would think, like, how much money can somebody really make in the tree care industry? And, after I got to about 20 to 25 franchise units, we actually paused development for about a 2-year period. And we just focused with all of those franchisees. And I'm very grateful that every one of them stuck through. We were able to deliver them everything they needed to build a very successful business. And fast forward many years later, there's a fair amount of those earliest franchisees that have renewed their 10-year franchise agreement, and they're continuing into their second term. Others who have aged out of the business and sold it, or did a sale to a neighboring franchisee or someone else within the system. So, but there was a lot of lessons that were learned through that. And then where I was really able to put that on display was when you and I had met. And so I'll never forget October of 2016 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We both sit down at the same table at a franchising event to have lunch, and we're just chit-chatting and, having conversation. And you say to me, you asked me, do I know, and I forget the gentleman's name, but you said, do you know this person? I'm like, I do. They go, I think he told me about your business. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me about a tree care franchise. I said, well, it had to be mine because I'm the only guy doing this.
Right.
And then that's when you shared with me your goals of launching your new company. And then ultimately we had an opportunity in 2017 to start working together. And when we started that explosive sort of phase 2 growth of the company, everything we learned in that first phase and then pausing development gave us all of the tools we needed, the infrastructure to really support those franchisees. Because in a 36-month period, we put close to 200 franchise units or more on the map that we were able to successfully open all of them, help them grow, achieve strong profitability within their business. And then, as I said a few seconds ago, that where all of this really came to fruition was when I had an opportunity to acquire Redbox Plus in June of 2018, and then over a 36-month period, award 300 plus territories across the country, open 100% of them, see 100% success rate. And during my ownership, we never had a single closure in that business. And that was a testament to not just the industry and the franchisees that joined the business, but the systems and processes that were put in place to really support people and ensure their success.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A couple of things came to mind there, just that I always enjoy watching how you grow business. So I remember the first time that I came up and visited you, you took me to your yard, and this yard was, how many acres was it?
It was 13 acres.
13 acres. But you were still, you said 2016. So you probably 33, 34 years old.
Yeah.
I was so impressed because there was just rows and rows of trucks and heavy equipment and the service, the products or the machinery that you needed to do your service. And then there was, you're like, oh, I have the dried logs over here, and this is what I'm doing with it. And I have these logs over here, and I'm turning it into mulch. And just every single piece of that yard was planned, and you knew what was going on, and you were into it. So I was super impressed with that yard. I know you love that yard. That had to be hard for you to get rid of.
I think that's what kept me in the industry for 12 years. Yeah. Beyond the money I was making, it was like, recycling all those products on the back end was just a good feeling because, you want to try to, be as green as you can be in certain things you do in your life, but to be able to recycle 100% of the products and get paid twice. Because if you think we perform services for customers who paid us to remove all that debris, and then it came back, and then we were able to process it and either make mulch out of wood chips, take certain logs and sell them to lumber mills to manufacture, construction lumber, furniture, whatever they might be making out of that material. And then all of the remaining firewood grade logs were processed into firewood and then sold right back to those same customers.
That's awesome.
As firewood to heat their homes or for whatever ambiance they might have had with just a wood burning fireplace or a fire pit in their yard.
Okay, so this sounds all great. I mean, you're 11 businesses in at this point, right? 11 businesses, all right? So people are listening and watching this. They're thinking, holy smokes, like that's incredible, right? So I want you to break it down. I want you to boil down to me to a couple things that you've learned that if you'd identify maybe 3 things as an entrepreneur, like what helps you make you successful?
The number one thing is character traits. So I think when you think about your own personal character traits and values, that's really important. So like if you start with things like execution, accountability, and work ethic are 3 words that I always speak to often, because I think with any of those missing, it's very difficult to go out and really build something. And then from there, it's a lot of grit and understanding that you've got to make decisions with limited information, because running a business, you're the captain of the ship. I mean, you're the person that's making the decisions. And at times you have to guide your employees into making decisions. You have to guide your customers into making decisions. And so, for me, I've just never allowed fear to get in the way of anything that I'm going to go build. I always set out with a very positive mindset. Like still to this day, if, and Ryan knows this, all the years he's known me, you call me and you ask me how you doing. The first thing you can hear is I'm living the dream. And maybe I've just convinced myself that I'm living the dream, but I genuinely think that, if you just keep a positive attitude, it's like I was explaining to one of my kids the other day that said, school sucks, homework stupid. I said, as long as you keep telling yourself that, like, you're going to hate it. Like you're going to hate getting up and going to school. You're going to hate doing the work. But if you just, and he's in 6th grade, my son, and I'm like, but if you just spend the next 6 years with a positive attitude, guess what? You're going to graduate school and you're going to be able to go on and do whatever you want to do. Like I didn't go to college. I went right into running my businesses. Now, my 12-year-old son doesn't have a business yet. He talks about different things he'd like to do, but my wife and I'd like him to remain focused on school and then determine what he wants to do later. But really just having that positive mindset, because I find the biggest thing that gets in the way of any entrepreneur is just the fear. And there's so many unknowns. Like we can, just ask a million questions, but it's great to ask a lot of questions to educate yourself. But if you're asking a lot of those questions and it's getting in the way of you making decisions, you're never going to make decisions. Right. And so like there's times even in our businesses today as a franchisor where like we have to have difficult conversations with candidates as they come through a process and say, hey, based on your behavior and your actions thus far through the process, we have concerns over your ability to truly execute as an entrepreneur, because you're looking for 100% of the information to make a decision here, and we're never going to get it to. Like you have to recognize that, there's certain things that you're going to have to make decisions to move forward with limited information, deal with the outcome. Everything may not work exactly as you intended it to, but you have to take the curveballs and then adjust and repivot. And that comes back to a lot of what you said, Ryan, about the way you've watched me over the last 7 to 8 years, deal with conflict or issues as they arise within a business and not look at it as a challenge and just work right through it and find solutions.
You ever almost quit? Is there any time that you almost quit?
I'll tell you, in my entrepreneurial journey, there's only one time that I thought about throwing in the towel. And, it was very personal to me because when I ran my tree care business, I had a personal friend of mine who was actually a groomsman in my wedding, made a very bad decision in November of 2012 to walk onto a job site without a safety helmet. And it was right after a bad storm. And there was a hanging limb in a tree that broke loose and actually hit him in the head and killed him. And so in that moment, like I just thought to myself, like, is this all worth it? Because, it was something that was so dramatic that I thought to myself, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? But then you get through it and you realize, you just self-reflect and you go, I provided this guy all of the safety stuff. We have weekly, safety trainings. This guy ran the safety meetings. And then you start saying to yourself, like, it was a bad decision by an individual. And it's not a direct reflection of anything that I did. I feel horrible about the fact that, he lost his life in the line of duty on a job site working for me. But that's the only time in my career that I've ever thought about throwing in the towel. But I also talk a lot to people about, what the journey of running a business looks like, because, the disadvantage the general public gets put at, in my opinion, and a lot of people tend to agree with me on this, is that business owners make business ownership look easy. And it's like anything, you walk into a bookstore and do you really know what you're looking for? Or you just pick something up because it has a nice cover to it. And so when you live in a neighborhood, you watch your neighbor launch a new business, and all of a sudden a new vehicle shows up in their driveway. All of a sudden they take a nicer family vacation than maybe they ever have in the past. And you go, man, business ownership must be nice, but you're not really getting the inside pages and peeling back the layers of the onion to see the conversations that are happening behind closed doors, the late evenings or weekends, whatever it might take to build something. So, I always just tell people business ownership is about having 360 great days a year, and you're going to have 4 or 5 WTF days, but don't allow those to, shadow all of the great that you're building. And focus on, really developing enterprise value. And I think for me, it's much easier because I've already been able to do that many times, where for somebody doing it for the first time, there's a lot of emotion that comes into play.
Man. Yeah. Well, first off, I'd never heard that story about your friend. So sorry that happened,
Yeah.
but your perspective is spot on. And you said something, you said, is the juice worth the squeeze? So I'm going to ask you another, is the juice worth the squeeze question.
Yeah.
So after you sold Monster, you pushed into Redbox, and then you sold Redbox, and you were at a position in your life where you could have sailed into the sunset. You could have been done, but you didn't. Instead, you said, hey, maybe it'd be fun for the next 10 to 20 years of my life to just continue to work my tail off every single day. And that leads into kind of the idea of the Sidekick Life. The whole purpose of this podcast is to talk about, who do we protect? Whose back do we have? Who's our hero as a sidekick, right? So in your life, I got 2 questions. One, why did you push into it again with horsepower when you could have just been done? And who are you a sidekick to?
Yeah. So on that first question, why did I choose to launch Horsepower Brands after, selling 2 very large companies? It was really more about legacy than anything, because, I think so many people just focus on vision and goals in anything they do in life, whether it be a career or starting a business or just what their overall achievements look like into the future. But I think everyone just skips right over legacy, and everyone just assumes legacy is like after you die. But, I hear people, franchise candidates that I speak to ahead of them coming to a discovery day and executing a franchise agreement with us, talk about how when they leave, they've left jobs and then they have a loyal following. Like they've gone from one company to another and people are like, just tell me where you go. Like, I'm following you. Like, that's legacy. Like, you made an impact on somebody. And so for me, like, I truly believe what I want my legacy to be is, I want to be remembered as someone that helped as many people live the American dream through business ownership. And so franchising has provided me a vertical to be able to do that. And then be able to, in your terms of a sidekick, be a sidekick to those franchisees, by building, scaling, and developing strong teams to provide, not only systems and processes, but ongoing coaching and mentorship to help those people achieve their why. Because, everyone, that's looking at entrepreneurship either through acquisition or through launching a franchise opportunity, there's a reason why they've gotten to this point in their life. And I tell everyone, there's a reason why you're here. But more often than not, what I also say to people is, and I even tell friends this, is that nobody that we talk to has to do anything. Like, they're typically gainfully employed, or they've got a successful portfolio of businesses. And, the reason of why they're speaking to us or they're looking for a business is not because they need to make more money, but they've got this sort of shadow over them of like, look at all the things I've done for other businesses, people that I've worked for, and I've created a lot of value in things for other people. And I want to do that for myself. And so that's why, like, when I made the decision to launch this, it was so important for me to make it about how can we deliver the best value and the highest level of service and support while focusing on, the success of our franchisees. Well, we don't do everything perfect because nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We do wake up every day, through every employee within the organization, including myself as a founder and visionary of the organization, to do what's right for our franchisees and really help them grow. Because truly, at the end of the day, we have one customer as a franchisor, and it's our franchisees who are then out there servicing the general public.
It's great. We got your website pulled up real quick here. So we've got, Mighty Dog, Blingle. So we've got roofing, installation, lawn care. So, these are some things that people potentially could say and look at this and say, I could do this myself, right? So I want you've been in franchising, being extremely successful with it, help people become successful. Why would somebody choose a franchise over doing it themselves?
It's very simple. The people we work with are at a stage in their life where, they've spent 10 to 20 or more years in corporate America. And we all have to realize that at some point in our life, we only have so much time to accomplish what we want to. And so I'm a firm believer that a good franchise system will put you in a position, especially in the home service space like we're in. If you can focus as a business owner on things that make you money, sales and production, generate those sales, produce those, projects that you're selling, those are the things that are going to drive revenue to your business versus, everyone, and we say it openly, anyone can go start any one of these businesses on their own, but how many years are they going to lose before they ever get across the finish line to generate their first revenue producing activity in completing a project? They got to figure out what industry they're going into, what's the name of the business they're going to have, who are they hiring to build out a website, what's their go-to-market strategy, what equipment do they need, what's their sales process look like, all these different things. Like there's just dozens of, tasks that you have to complete that no franchisee ever has to deal with. Like and we have franchisees in our business that have come into certain business lines that we have that have owned businesses before that were anti-franchise and said, hey, we don't think this is going to be the right fit for us. We're truly looking at entrepreneurship through acquisition, but we came across you guys, or, we found our Sidekick advisor by, seeing an advertisement because we were looking for businesses. And, so we're just exploring this, but we just want to be upfront and transparent. It's very unlikely this is the direction we're going to go. But then as an experienced business person, they then start going through and they start validating, and they hear people talk about how they executed a franchise agreement and 120, 150 days later, less than 6 months, these people are out running a business in an industry they knew little to nothing about and generating revenue. And so that's where you've got to think of the time value of money. And then when you think about the cost that's associated, because that's the other thing that some people look at and go, well, what's the value in what I'm paying for you? You're launching a business from zero because every new franchise location starting from the ground up, they get an opportunity. The pro is versus an acquisition of an existing business, they control the culture and the vision of what they're going to build. They get to hand select the people who are going to be a part of building, their local location. But more importantly, getting out of the gate early and building and scaling that business gives them the ability to go out there as part of a franchise and have access to service, support, and resources that some businesses that are at 10, 25, even 50 million in revenue don't have the level of support that's offered right out of the gate. And luckily at Horsepower Brands, we put so much infrastructure on the front end so that, when we launch a brand or an opportunity within our portfolio, we have a level of support on staff already for that particular brand that's dedicated to it that could support at least 50 franchisees before we award the first location.
It's one of the reasons I'm such a believer in franchising. I lived that exact experience myself. So we were both in the GNC system early in our career, and I was the COO of 13 GNCs. They were the top producing GNCs in the country. Yep. We were making a ton of money. And then we decided, I decided to leave, and we became co-founders of another nutrition concept called Complete Nutrition. And I remember we were egotistical. Like, we are the best GNCs in the country. We're going to go do this on our own, and it's going to be super successful right away. It was nothing like that. All of a sudden, I'm looking at a blank store, and I'm like, I got to figure out the POS and the product and the planogram and the marketing. People didn't know if we were selling treadmills or food or supplements. There was so much to recreate, even though by GNC's terms, we would have been considered the best franchisees from a sales side in the system. It took us 2 years. We broke away, and for 2 years didn't make a dollar because we didn't have the support of the franchisor. So I lived it. I want to transition it a little bit to Horsepower. So, you've started several companies, we've started several companies. And when you first get going, even though you got a tremendous amount of confidence in yourself, and especially with Horsepower, since you had already done it, you probably really felt like this thing's going to work. But there's always that moment when you're like, it's working. Talk to us a little bit about, like, when was it in the life cycle of Horsepower when you were like, we have something special here? Like, this is going to turn into something really great.
Well, the first thing I think any new business venture you start on, regardless of your experience, you still have to put the same amount of time and attention to it as you've done on everything else. Because if you just go into anything and assume history has a tendency to repeat itself, I've been successful in the things I've done before, so this will just automatically be successful. There's no automatics in business ownership. It takes a lot of effort to really build something. But for us, it started initially as Mighty Dog Roofing. And we, as a child, it's important that, when I think back to like being a young child. My father worked on a lot of new construction sites doing hardwood floors in new homes. And when I was around these construction sites, there was three things that really fascinated me. The companies that came in and cleared the trees. So the tree care industry, which I was obviously in. The roll-off trucks that would come in and out, just taking construction dumpsters full of debris. I'm like, man, those trucks are cool. Like, I'd love to own a dumpster company someday. And then I actually found myself at a young age when I was supposed to be in the backyard of a house playing with my, go-kart on the dirt mounds of the topsoil. They were waiting for the homes to be done and then grade it all out. I climbed a 40-foot ladder right on a roof. I'm walking around asking the roofers going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I was fascinated by the roofing business. And so Mighty Dog Roofing was really like to complete that trifecta of everything I was doing, because the whole acquisition process of that business began before I ever sold Monster Tree Service or Redbox. And I was actually going to run 3 franchise brands out of 3 different states with corporate locations as well. And so as I began to build that business and things changed and the other 2 businesses were acquired, as I watched a lot of what I was observing of the platform companies that acquired my 2 brands, I realized that there's issues that exist in building a platform company by using private equity and just merging founder-led businesses together with hundreds of locations. And there's supposed to be these economies of scale and these values that come to the franchisees. But for me, like I didn't see any value diminished in the ultimate brand, but I just didn't see a lot of value add by the overarching portfolio. And so I said, what if we could grow this thing, continue with a narrow acquisition strategy of really 3 key items. Services provided to homeowners and business owners that could be used by all across North America and or are required to really maintain and keep your home. And then additionally, I wanted high average unit volumes. And so with those high average unit volumes, I'm looking for businesses that have the ability to scale to north of $1 million in revenue. And then lastly, 3 or less operating locations. If we can do that, we can control the culture of everything we build. And from day one, and I remember in December of 2020, when we were just Mighty Dog Roofing, we stood in front of a room and told 4 franchise candidates that were there at our first discovery day and less than 10 employees at Mighty Dog Roofing at the time that our long-term vision and goal is to build a platform company to where we can have a true cross-marketing opportunity to where we touch everything on a home. And so fast forward to where we are today with nine companies providing dozens of different services to homeowners and property managers and commercial building owners across the country. We're really completing that mission. And that's really what I saw as the opportunity in building this thing. And then we have an entire services vertical where we do things for our franchisees, from marketing. We have a dealership entity that helps to acquire and source all of your vehicles, bookkeeping, recruiting. There's just so many things that we offer. We have a national partnerships team through Z Partnerships that, helps to procure all of the national accounts on behalf of our franchise businesses across the country. So there's a lot of things in addition to being a franchisor that we do that brings a lot of value to our franchisees. And that's really what I envisioned as I started this and why I made the decision to, launch another franchise brand beyond the 2 that I had already built.
Yeah, makes sense. And so tell us where it is today. Horsepower is what today?
So today, Horsepower Brands is a culmination of 9 different home service brands. We've awarded close to 1,500 franchise territories across the country. We have over 1,200 of those already open. As I said earlier, the life cycle of a franchisee executing an agreement and opening is just shy of 6 months. So we have a lot of franchisees that are in that pre-launch phase of, getting their business ready to launch. Obviously, because of the time of the year, some of those people are waiting till springtime to assist in a stronger launch, depending on the market they're in, if they're in an exterior type business. And so, as we continue to grow, we have a clear direction and path to where we're going to be able to provide billions of dollars of services to consumers all over North America. And what's really unique, in addition to just being a franchisor and our franchisees offering services, is we actually have a unique platform called Howie, HowieKnowsHow.com. And what that is like, think of an Angie's List or a Home Advisor, any type of online lead platform that consumers find themselves landing on when they're out there and they're doing Google searches for services to their home. They don't realize as they fill out a contact form, their information is being sold to 6 different companies or more, that they're now being bombarded by service companies. So our whole idea was, how do we take all of these franchisees in markets across the country? They're competing for the exact same customer, pool our dollars together. And then we have this marketing, face to the consumers and the general public to where we can gather all the first party data. And like if I'm in a roofing business and I go and install a new roof for a customer, well, they're probably not going to need me again for an extended period of time unless I made a mistake and there's a craftsmanship issue. So if I start sending a constant contact even monthly to them, they're going to unsubscribe pretty quickly. So how do we continue to bring value out of that customer to an entire portfolio? And how can our franchisees cross market by reducing that customer acquisition cost? And that's where, Howie is really bringing all of that together to where we see a day to where that's really the trusted source where people won't go to a search engine like Google or the other search engines that are out there. They'll begin to trust Howie as the network. And all of those businesses that are providing those services are part of the Horsepower Brands portfolio. So we know the quality, we know the insurance requirements, everything that goes into it. And then we can just continue to cultivate those customers.
Me? I'll keep going. All right. I love it. That's such a brilliant idea because you're exactly right. A lot of times when you're, getting the services done that several of your franchises provide, you're not going to need it again for years. So it makes me think back too. I remember, I forget what you called it, but back at the Monster Tree days, when you would do a job, you would use the trucks obviously for marketing, and then you had somebody that would walk around to the other homes. What was that called? You guys had a
canvassing.
Canvassing.
Yep.
So it makes me think like you're always just thinking about how you're sort of cross-promoting, leveraging the relationship that you've already done. You already trust me to perform a service. Now can I do it for your neighbors? Or in this case, we've got, sister companies that can come do other things. So it's just
adding value to the franchisees too.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge win for the franchisees.
Well, the biggest value to the franchisees in the system is that you're now able to market all of through Howie. Like the individual franchisees aren't controlling the marketing to the existing customers. It's all being controlled at the Howie level. But if I'm a franchisee in iPhone and now my services are being offered out to all the other 8 franchisees, in the other 8 brands that could be operating in my market, or if there's open territories around me that I have the ability to service until they're acquired, there's a tremendous amount of marketing going out on my behalf at no cost to me. And then for incoming franchisees, new ones into the business, imagine launching a new business. What's the number one thing you have to do? Is you have to go out and find your customers. Well, now if you can come into a portfolio company where the value proposition really comes in is, like if I'm launching a new brand and now I'm going into Atlanta, Georgia, and I know there's, call it 35 operating franchisees in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, then I'm coming into the market launching my new Groovy Hughes painting brand. And how many tens of thousands of customers are now being blasted with Groovy Hughes marketing stuff. And all of a sudden, in addition to the stuff that I'm marketing directly of my individual brand, I'm also getting, all of that. And then additionally from the referral partnerships, because when we're running home service businesses, we're not just looking to buy leads. We're also building relationships. And we're always trying to target about 70% of our revenue to come organically through, referrals, organic business, and try to keep 30% or less of our revenue from paid traffic. And so when you think about the existing franchisees that have now networked into those referral partners as Howie, you just become another trusted source right into it. You don't have to go build that relationship. It's been built for you. Like that's the quickest path to drive revenue and build a business.
Which goes back, go ahead.
I love franchising. Going back to the original question is the fact that there are so many people and we talk to so many clients and we work with thousands of clients every year trying to find that perfect franchise brand. And we get this question from people. Why would I do this when I could just do it myself? And you have described it perfectly, and it's 100% true. It's scale, it's all these tools, all this marketing prowess. It's incredible. So that's why I love franchising. On the way here, I was listening to Dan Martell, Buy Your Time Back. Have you guys read that book? Great book, right? So he's just talking about leveraging your superpower as an entrepreneur, and franchising allows you to do it because you can sit back and say, I want to do the marketing. I want to do this. I want to do the ops, or maybe I want to focus just on this. Franchising allows you to do it. And you guys have set up a great system to allow your franchisees to do that. It's incredible.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. All right. I love stories. So I want to tell another story. This is a show for people that are either entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. Yeah. And so you've got some really cool stories that I was part of. I remember, so this was after we had already been working with Monster Tree for a period of time. And I think you were starting to think about what's next. And you call me up and you're like, I think you had already been negotiating it for a period of time. You're like, I found this brand. I want to partner with the original founder. And he started telling me about Redbox Plus. And it was so cool. And then I think you were looking for us to maybe just give our opinion on whether or not we felt that it would be attractive to franchise buyers. And so you invited us up. What was that town in Minnesota we went to?
Winona,
Minnesota. Yeah, it's a small town. And met Jeff and his wife. They were fantastic. They own this little recycling company, which was super cool. But then it was, we go into this shop and you could Josh and Jeff, and they were going over this dumpster. But the cool thing about it, and Tyler, you know this, but for those of you that are listening, the cool thing about this Redbox Plus dumpster is it also had 2 porta potties in it. Yep. And you said to me, what are the 2 things that you see on every construction site? And for me, in franchising, I've had a lot of duh moments. I'm not that smart. So sometimes I'm just like, duh, that was a duh moment for me. Like, holy cow, I can't believe it. Nobody's done this before. And you saw the opportunity, you met the founder, you created a relationship there, and you ultimately said, look, I know how to grow a franchise. And you did it. You took it from, what was it, a couple of locations at the time?
It was 4 locations when I acquired the company.
And 3 years later, or whenever it was that you
resold. It was well over 300.
300, right? And you've created the relationships, you've created the system to take great brands and explode them. But tell me how you remember that story, because that was fun.
Well, the actual journey of how I got into Redbox Plus was unique because Jeff, the founder, and I had a mutual acquaintance. And, Jeff had reached a point where he's in his early 50s at the time, and he decided to franchise. And, he went to a waste expo, won like most innovative product of the year at the waste expo, which is huge because these are, some publicly traded companies and, huge private companies that are coming from all over the world to these types of events hosted out in Las Vegas. And, Jeff just, someone says, you should franchise that. Very similar to like how I got into franchising with Monster Tree. So he did the same thing I did and, began franchising and found himself, with 3 or 4 franchisees. He was running a location. He had 3 or 4 franchisees running locations. And he's like, I'm just not cut out for this, man. He goes like, I love my 2nd generation waste business. Like I'm a blue collar guy. I'm a worker. Like I don't want to take calls from people of like, how do you do this? Like, and back to what I said earlier with Monster Tree, like so many things that just came to me naturally as an entrepreneur that doesn't come to someone who's stepping into business ownership for the first time and has to be taught these things. Mm-hmm. And so it was asked of me to just take a lunch meeting. Jeff's going to fly into Pennsylvania to meet with you. Will you take a lunch meeting with him? And I said, sure. So I carve out a few hours out of my schedule. We meet, mutual acquaintances based in Philadelphia. So 3 of us go out to lunch. 2-hour lunch turns into 4-hour lunch. I got to leave to get to a meeting. We then connect for dinner. And at the end of dinner that night, he says to me, he goes, dude, you gave me the most valuable advice today. And I said, great. So are you going to execute on it? He goes, no, there's no way. I cannot do what you told me I need to do. He goes, just buy my company. He goes, just buy my company. He goes, I know I got a great product. And he goes, I know you're going to go on and make a ton of money with this thing. But he goes, just let me remain involved and manage the equipment side. And I said, well, that's perfect because I'm not a manufacturing guy. Because what was unique with Redbox Plus is we weren't just a franchisor. We had to manufacture all the products. So we had a manufacturing facility that we partnered with a group out in Minnesota. We were manufacturing the containers. We were shipping them. We had assembly crews going around the country. And Jeff's dream, the founder, was just like, dude, I want to travel in an RV, set up dumpsters with my wife and my 2 dogs. And like, that'll just, for us, like the kids are older, they're in their 20s now. And we just want to go travel the country in an RV. And we did. And we were able to really build and scale that business. And, I look back and at first I second guessed myself, like, should I do this? And the only reason why I second guessed myself was because for one of the first times in my entrepreneurial career, I allowed fear to set in. And that fear was a lot of other people doing this. And I said to myself, how am I going to break into the construction business with a new dumpster product? Because, do you know a contractor that doesn't have a dumpster guy? Like every contractor has a dumpster guy. And if they don't have one, they can find dozens of them in a heartbeat.
And it's a low-cost business.
It's a low-cost business and it's a high volume, business, and the equipment's expensive. Yeah. And so I said, why am I going to let fear get in the way of me now when this is going to be a patented product? It's so unique. And I reminded myself that not everybody's going to be a Redbox Plus customer. And it's something I think every entrepreneur doesn't think of when they're thinking about the business that they're going into. And they're thinking about like, well, are there people in my market that are underperforming, cutting the local marketplace from a price standpoint? Are there people that have a stronghold on the market in this industry? But then what we forget about is not everybody's our customer. And so we just have to go identify who our customer is and do a really good job at going out and get them. And we did. And our franchisees grew so fast and we manufactured thousands and thousands of dumpsters. I've lost count of how many. And then Belfour Restoration, who was one of our largest customers, they obviously acquired the business after running it for about 3 years.
Yeah, so cool. Timmy, will you pull that page you just had back up?
sketch out.
Yeah.
That's
So this
incredible.
sketch, this is kind of like a core memory for me in franchising. So I remember you and I, and we went to Jeff's house, and awesome house. I remember he was super proud of that commercial jukebox he had. He was like the only guy in Winona that had it. And he had this hanging.
Maybe the only guy in Winona that could afford one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he had this hanging next to it, and he pulls it off the wall and he shows it to me. And he was telling me this, he was on an airplane and he just started to jot down the ideas of how you could put dumpsters and porta potties together. And this was his original idea, eventually got the patent. But here's what I love about the innovation of entrepreneurship. He knew what his limitations were. You know, he said what he was. He met you. He knew what you were. You guys brought this thing together, and it was a win-win for you, him, the franchisees, Belfour, win for a lot of people. And that's what I love about franchising. It is a distribution model of great businesses. You just have to figure out a way to find the better franchise opportunities. It's why we spend tons of time with you and your team, because we want to understand your brands and all of that. So it's why I love what we do. But we do have to now transition, because, you know, we only have so much time. So I want to transition to the second part of the Sidekick Life podcast. First, we talk about who we're sidekicks to, but then once we help enough other people, once we are a sidekick to enough other people, it allows us to have the life that we've always dreamed of. So who you are today is still, your character is still the same as it was when I met you, you know, so many years ago. But your life is different because you've created success for so many other people. So talk to us about yours and Barbara's and the kids' life and how this has changed that.
I'm going to throw something in there too, buddy.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to hear a day in life. Like give me an average day for you too. In this whole thing, tell me what your average day kind of looks like.
Yeah. So I'll first hit on what Ryan had asked, about, Barbara, my wife, and we have 3 kids, 10, 12, and 13. And so I will tell you, what really leads into this, it started at a young age with starting my businesses. When I was going through grade school and shortly after grade school, my friends would say, "You're no fun. You just work all the time." But from an early age, I realized, like, I want to take control of my future, because I watched so many customers at an early age that traveled all the time or worked all the time. And I watched one parent, oftentimes the mother, just run the kids all over God's creation. And, they lived in a nice house, they drove nice vehicles, they took nice vacations, but I don't believe they really got to truly experience like what it was like raising a family at an early age. So I always said, I'm going to spend my time and energy to build wealth for myself at an early age, so that when I get to the point where I meet the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, which is my wife of almost 15 years, Barbara, and have kids, I want to be able to be in control of my time, to spend as much time with them as possible. And so now, fast forward, being 41 years old, I have so many of my friends who are now in that grind that they're traveling all the time. They're working around the clock. They're missing out on so many of their kids' activities and just events, and their kids are growing up, and they're going, "Dude, you were right. You did it right." And so, like, for us, we spend a lot of quality time together. We have a lot of hobbies. We'd like to do a lot of things outdoors. We're avid skiers. So, like, when I think about what business ownership has really given us the ability to do, it's given us the ability to control our time. Like I said to somebody yesterday, to like Tyler's question, I said, well, like, what's a day in your life look like? Like, how do you plan around all these things you got going on, all these businesses? Like, you ever take any time off? I'm like, dude, if I go into my calendar right now and I want to block off next Tuesday just because I feel like taking a day off to hang out with my wife, I can do that if I don't have any other scheduled meetings. I don't have to answer to anyone. I didn't mention it earlier in the conversation when I talked about my background, but I've never been a W-2 employee my entire life. I've only ever worked for myself. And so, for us, like, we do take control. Like, we're there at the kids' events. Obviously, there's times where there's things I might have to miss as I'm building a business. But I still put an awful lot of effort and time into my businesses, but I work a lot smarter. And I think that's what we all really learn as we grow in business and a career, is we learn more efficiencies, but we learn how to really work on things. Like, you've known me for a long time, Ryan, and one of the things that, you've probably recognized is that I'm a developer of people. And so it's no secret as to why I'm in franchising as a franchisor. When I talk about my legacy of helping people live the American dream through business ownership, like, when it comes to the people that work for me, like, I'd rather delegate, and I do not follow the what a lot of people do, where they think the only way to get something done right is to do it themselves. Right. Because if you do that, you're going to spend your time just working nonstop. When it comes to what a day in a life looks like for me, I'm a type of person that, like, doctors would freak out about how little I sleep. Like, I don't drink any caffeine. it's like, I just don't have any vices. I love to work. Like I love problem solving. I love the challenges that come with running a business. So for me, I'm up early in the morning, but I'm up early in the morning, getting some work done. And then I'm focused on ensuring that I'm present to help the kids get out the house in the morning. And then while they're in school, doing what I need to do for business. And then in the evenings, helping with activities and obviously doing what work I can. But then what I do that's really, I really am efficient with my time as much as possible is that I then in the evenings, I actually start winding down my work from the east to the west because I take advantage of that 3-hour time difference of the West Coast. And so there's evenings where I might still be working at 11 or 12 o'clock at night because what I'm doing is I'm working my way to continue to not only build relationships, but ensure that all the things are getting done as I can maximize my time moving across the country, as I mentioned, to the West Coast. And then by 12 o'clock, I'm shutting it down and I'm back up again the next morning by 4 to 5 a.m.
You know how you know when a guy really likes to work? When you ask him, tell us about how it's affected your personal life. And you tell us about how you work. Yeah. Is there any, and you don't have to share anything, but is there anything you would share just about your personal life that that you're proud of or you appreciate or that you're involved in now because of all the people that you've helped? For me and like Barbara, we're philanthropic. So we do a lot of things on a local level. There's different organizations that we're fond of. So, as we've been successful, we've been very cognizant about making sure that we can do things to share the wealth. As I said earlier, we're very big on helping others and doing that and really helping people grow. So that's really something that we're passionate about. But beyond that, like as we've achieved success, our life really hasn't changed. A funny story that I'll tell you about, shortly after my wife and I met, thinking about franchising and systems and processes, we had been dating about a year. And she says to me, we really have a lot of fun when we're together. Like, what's it going to take to make this work long term? I said, it's really simple. I said, we were actually in Florida for a long weekend together. And I said, when we get home, move in with me. We'll get married. We'll have kids and life will be great. And she's like, really? That's it? Those 3 things? I'm like, move in with me. I said, if you want to have kids first and then get married, whatever order you want to go, but you got to move in first. And I said, shortly after, it doesn't have to be immediately when we get home, but shortly after we get home. And so she goes, she's in her early 20s at the time. She goes, do you mind if I ask my parents about that? And, she asked her parents, like, go for it. He's a nice guy. We really like him. You like him. And so she moved in with me. We got married a year later. We started a family. We were pregnant 3 months after that, and started a family. And do we have our disagreements at time? Absolutely, like any other couple does. But we have such a strong relationship together, and we're very aligned in everything that we're doing.
It's awesome. So your son, he's 12 years old. You're at that age. I've got a 10-year-old. So I'm starting to think about this. We talk about this quite a bit. Like, how do you translate this to your kids, right? And so you had mentioned that he's been talking about business. And well, first of all, tell me, has he actually expressed interest in business and certain things?
He does. So something I did, my wife thought I was crazy when I started doing this when my kids were very young in pack and plays and stuff. I would sit them in my home office when I'd be on calls because I'm like, they're a sponge. I just want them to hear everything. My kids do not let me hold a phone to my ear or put AirPods in. If they're in the car with me or in the same room with me, the phone has to be on speakerphone so they can listen to the conversation.
They want to listen to it. Huh?
They want to listen to the conversation. And then all 3 of my kids, between my son and my two daughters, they ask a lot of questions afterwards. And it's almost like I don't role play it, but they do. They go, hey, Dad, when this person said this, could you have said that? And like I said earlier, my kids are 10, 12, and 13. And I tell everyone, the greatest asset you can give to any kid that's under your roof and living in your household is exposure to business ownership. Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. A couple years ago, it's actually 3 years ago this month, my son and I and a friend of mine who's my son's friend's dad, we go to a local zoo. And, it's a nonprofit and they have donation buckets around. It's a windy day. Well, someone must have missed the donation bucket and $1 goes flying across the walkway. And my son was 9 at the time, and his buddy Gavin slams down on $1 with his foot, and he picks up and he goes, Dad, can I buy Roblox with this? And my son looks at him in just perfect unison and goes, Gavin, you do not spend that money, dude. You buy stocks with it. You never touch the principal, and you choose what percentage of the interest you want to actually spend, and you let the money grow. And this is $1, right?
Yeah, that's right. House money.
And so my buddy Brandon looks at me and goes, dude, do you think you're starting him a little young? I said, all I did was just let him listen. He listened to conversations that I've had with investment advisors. He's listened to, some of the things that I listen to, like podcasts or just different TV shows, where there's, education about money and wealth. And, he hears the conversations I have with other business owners and respective franchisees that are part of the systems. And so it is cool to kind of watch them develop. And, we all have kids here, and, it's like, you always wonder, like, when they're young, what are they going to be? And then as they start to grow and you see them kind of shape into who they are, you don't want to try to take too much control of what their future is going to look like. You just want to give them the guidance and the mentorship, and then really allow them to, carve their future. But I think my wife and I have played a huge impact on what they'll do in the future.
That's great.
Yeah. We did, Timmy and I did a podcast the other day about the 4 most important financial days of my life. And number 1 was the day I decided to invest.
Yes.
Right. And so you're teaching your son that. My kids, I don't know if you use a tool, this is going to be a plug for it. Greenlight.
Yes.
I love Greenlight.
Yeah,
I mean, my kids, they invest, they have their debit cards off of that. So it's awesome. Anyway, Josh, I know you got to work, right? I know we got a timeline here because you got to make an important phone call, but this has been great. Appreciate you. Appreciate what you've done for franchising. Appreciate all the lives that you've been a sidekick to. So, anyway, we're just happy that we get to continue to represent your brands in the Sidekick inventory. And if anybody is interested in learning more about it, give us a buzz. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for joining us on the Sidekick Life, where we highlight true sidekicks, entrepreneurs who've got their customers' backs, solve real-world problems, and after helping enough people, get to live the life they've always dreamed of. We'll see you next time.